chosen one, stop. Don't touch that scroll. Don't you dare move past this moment. Because what just happened, the split second this message landed in front of your eyes, that was not the internet. That was not an algorithm. That was heaven reaching through your screen, grabbing you by the collar of your soul and saying, "Not one more step, not yet. Listen, hear me now." This is not a sermon. This is not encouragement wrapped in a pretty bow. This right here, right now, is an emergency broadcast from the throne room of God. And the alarm has already sounded. Some of you have been exhausted for so long, you've forgotten what rested feels like. Some of you have been betrayed not by strangers, but by the very people who sat at your dinner table, said amen beside you, called you family. Some of you have watched doors slam shut so fast, so hard, you stopped reaching for handles altogether. You called it bad luck. You called it getting old. You called it God's silence. I'm here to tell you, you called it wrong. What you've been living through isn't abandonment. It is a divine security protocol. Heaven doesn't shut down casually. When God issues a lockdown, He seals the room. He stops the traffic. He cuts the noise. Not to punish you, to protect you from what was coming through those very doors you've been crying about. Listen, some of you have been trying to move while God has been trying to seal the room. And tonight, He needs you to finally go still enough to hear what He's been trying to tell you since the silence began. What you called a setback may actually be a spiritual lockdown ordered by God Himself. If this message found you in a strange season, heavy, quiet, unusually still, type right now, "I hear the alarm." Because, beloved, the question isn't whether heaven is speaking. The question is, what is this lockdown protecting you from? And what happens if you walk back out into the noise before He opens that door? Stay with me. You need to hear every word of what comes next. You heard the alarm. You felt it land in your chest like a stone dropped in still water. But now you're asking the question heaven has been waiting for you to ask. Why? Why would God, the same God who parted the Red Sea, who split the sky with fire, who raised the dead, why would He go silent? Why would He allow the doors to close, the relationships to fall away, the opportunities to vanish like smoke? Why would He let you sit in a stillness so heavy it feels like a tomb? Beloved, I need you to lean in, because what I'm about to tell you will reframe every painful year of your life in the next 5 minutes. God doesn't lock down what He's finished with. He locks down what He's not done protecting. There are 5 reasons heaven issues a divine lockdown, and I promise you every single one of them has your name written on it. Reason number 1, to stop you from moving too soon. You know what killed more destinies than opposition ever did? Premature movement. Moving before the assignment was sealed. Stepping out before the preparation was complete. Noah didn't board the ark and then open the door whenever he felt like it. Genesis 7:16 says, God Himself shut the door. God shut it. Not Noah, not Noah's family, God. Because God knew what was coming, and He knew that one premature step outside that sealed chamber meant death. Some of you have been clawing at that door, begging God to reopen what He deliberately sealed. You've been calling it delay. You've been calling it punishment. Heaven calls it mercy. Reason number 2, to separate you from contamination. Not everything that was in your life was meant to go with you into your next season. Some relationships, even good relationships, even religious relationships, carried spiritual toxins that would have poisoned your assignment. God didn't pull those people out of your life because He was cruel. He pulled them out because He was surgical. A surgeon doesn't apologize for removing what would kill the patient. And God will not apologize for removing what would kill your calling. You called it loneliness. Heaven called it quarantine. Reason number 3, to protect you from an attack you couldn't see. When Israel was in Egypt and the angel of death passed through, God didn't just give them a warning. He told them to apply the blood, go inside, and not come out until morning. Exodus 12:22. None of you shall go out the door of his house until morning. There was something moving through the atmosphere that night that would have destroyed them if they had stepped outside that protected perimeter. And right now, there are spiritual forces moving through your circumstances that you cannot see with natural eyes. The reason God shut you in wasn't to imprison you. It was to keep what was hunting you out. Reason number 4. To break ungodly dependence. This one hurts. I know it does. Because some of what God removed you loved. A person, a position, a source of security that felt like an anchor. And when he took it, you didn't just grieve. You felt like the floor dropped out from under your entire life. But Elijah had to be hidden at the brook Cherith, 1 Kings 17, fed by ravens, completely alone, cut off from everything familiar. Why? Because before God could use him to call down fire on Mount Carmel, he had to make sure Elijah's dependency ran to him alone. Not to the king, not to the crowds, not to the prophetic success he'd known before. God will dry up the brook you're drinking from if that brook is replacing him. And if something in your life has dried up recently, hear me, that's not death. That's redirection toward the only source that never runs dry. Reason number 5. To preserve a future assignment so significant that it cannot be contaminated. Jesus, before the feeding of 5,000, before raising Lazarus, before the triumphal entry, withdrew. Luke 5:16. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed, not occasionally. Often. The Son of God himself understood that the assignment ahead required seasons of sealed preparation. If heaven required it of Jesus, what made you think it wouldn't require it of you? Now hear the climax of this truth. Hear it all the way down into your bones. God will sometimes lock you away from what you keep begging him to reopen, because he sees what you do not. He sees the person who would have used you. He sees the door that leads to a room with no floor. He sees the yes that would have cost you everything you haven't yet become. You called it abandonment. You called it the end. You called it God going cold and distant and silent. But heaven called it containment. Heaven called it protection. Heaven called it love. If God has closed something you kept trying to force open, if you've been pushing against a door that heaven sealed, type right now, Lord, I release it. Because the moment you stop fighting the lockdown, you'll finally hear what God has been trying to tell you inside it. And what he's been hiding you from is only half the story. The other half, what he's been hiding you for, that is what will take your breath away. Stay with me, because we're just now getting to the part that changes everything. Let me ask you something that nobody has been brave enough to ask you. When was the last time you truly felt seen? Not acknowledged, not tolerated, not smiled at from across a room. Truly seen the way God sees every layer of you, every silent sacrifice, every prayer you prayed alone at 2 in the morning when the house was dark and quiet, and the only sound was your own voice talking to heaven. You gave everything. You showed up faithfully. You served without recognition. You loved people who didn't love you back. You held your family together with both hands while your own heart was quietly breaking. And then, somewhere along the way, the room got smaller. The phone stopped ringing as much. The plans you built for this season of your life started dissolving one by one, like salt in rain. And the people you expected to be standing beside you, some of them walked away, some drifted, some looked right through you like you'd already become a ghost. I need you to stay with me right here, because this next part, this is the part nobody talks about in church. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from believing too long without visible results. It's not physical tiredness. It is the bone-deep weariness of a soul that has kept hope alive through too many winters. You know the feeling. You've been living inside it. You've had the conversations in your mind 100 times, the ones you never say out loud. What if nothing is coming after all? What if I misunderstood God? What if the silence doesn't mean preparation? What if it just means forgotten? Hear me, dear one. That fear is real. And it is not weakness. It is the honest cry of a faithful heart that has carried a promise for a very long time. Psalm 13, King David, a man after God's own heart, opened with these exact words, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" If the greatest worshipper who ever lived felt forgotten, you are in sacred company. But here is where I need to stop you cold. The silence you've been living in is not what you think it is. You've been reading it as rejection. Heaven has been using it as protection. You've been calling it a closed door. God has been calling it a sealed room. There is a difference, a vast, eternal difference between a door that is locked against you and a door that is locked for you. Think about Noah. 120 years he built that ark in plain sight while the world laughed. And then the day came, not when Noah was ready, not when the crowd finally believed him, but when God said, "Now." And Genesis 7:16 records something that most people miss. The Lord shut him in. God himself sealed the door. Not Noah, not an angel. God reached down and locked that door from the outside. Because what was inside was too precious to lose. Because the storm that was coming required a seal that only heaven could authorize. Chosen one, what if that is exactly what has been happening to you? The relationships that grew distant? God may have been removing voices that would have spoken confusion into the next chapter of your life. The plans that collapsed. He may have been tearing down scaffolding that was holding up a smaller version of your future. The isolation you felt, the strange, aching quiet. What if that wasn't heaven withdrawing? What if that was heaven clearing the room? Because here is the truth that will change how you read every hard season you have ever lived through. The room got quiet, not because heaven left you, but because heaven was clearing out every voice that could corrupt the next instruction. God cannot give you a new word in a room full of old noise. He cannot show you a new direction when you're surrounded by people still pointing you toward what he's already closed. The silence was not the absence of God. It was the sound of God working. Jeremiah 29:11, written to people in captivity, people who had lost everything, people who had every reason to believe God had abandoned them. God spoke these words, "I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope." He said that to people who were in chains. He said future to people who felt finished. When he is saying it to you, right now, in this moment. If you have cried in private and kept believing anyway, type right now, "God saw me," because he did, every single time. He saw you in the kitchen at midnight. He saw you in the parking lot of the hospital. He saw you sitting in that church pew, holding yourself together with everything you had, singing words you were trying to believe with a heart that was barely holding on. He saw all of it, and not one tear, not one hit the floor without meaning. But here is the question burning at the edge of everything I just told you. If God has been watching, if God has been sealing the room on purpose, if the silence has been strategic, not accidental, then what exactly is he preparing inside that sealed room? What is being built in this stillness that is so significant, so irreversible, so powerful that heaven itself had to clear the space to make room for it? Stay with me, because what comes next will answer the question you've been afraid to ask. Now that the alarm has sounded, now that you've felt it in your chest, that weight, that holy interruption, I need to tell you something that most preachers won't say out loud. The lockdown isn't just keeping you still. It is keeping certain things away from you. And some of those things you've been desperately praying to get back. Hear me clearly. Not every open door is from God. Not every reconnection is restoration. Not every urgent feeling in your chest is divine timing. And the enemy, he knows exactly how to dress a trap in the clothing of a blessing. Think about this. You're at this stage of your life. You've walked through fire. You've buried people you loved. You've started over more times than you care to count. And somewhere deep inside, there's a voice that whispers, "You're running out of time. This might be your last chance." That voice is not heaven speaking. That is fear wearing a prophet's robe. That is pressure masquerading as purpose. And that manufactured urgency, that panicked feeling that if you don't move right now, you'll miss everything, that is exactly the open gate the enemy uses to walk his Trojan horses straight into the middle of your destiny. Proverbs 14:12 says it plainly. There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end, it leads to death. Not discomfort, not inconvenience, death. Of your peace, of your purpose, of everything God has been building in the silence. So let me be specific. Let me name what this lockdown may be shielding you from. That relationship that came back out of nowhere after years of silence, after everything they put you through, suddenly texting again, suddenly calling again, suddenly acting like the person you always needed them to be. And you feel that old pull, that old hope flickering back to life. But ask yourself this, did they meet the new you, or are they coming back for the broken version of you they knew how to control? Some people don't return because they've changed. They return because they miss having access. And God in His mercy has barricaded that road. What about that opportunity that showed up urgent, flashing, promising everything you've been asking for? The deal, the investment, the connection that seems almost too perfectly timed. And because you've been waiting so long, because hope has been deferred so many times, everything inside you wants to run through that door before it closes. But beloved, an unseen wreck on the road ahead looks exactly like an open highway from where you're standing. This is why the lockdown exists, not to frustrate you, to fence you from what would have finished you. And there's something else. Something the enemy has been using on you that is far more subtle, far more dangerous, and it has a name. Spiritual exhaustion disguised as responsibility. You've been saying yes to everyone, carrying everyone's burdens, being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who never falls apart, and it has drained you down to almost nothing. But because it felt noble, because it felt like service, you never once stopped to ask, did God ask me to carry all of this? Matthew 11:30, Jesus said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." If what you're carrying is destroying you, it is not His yoke. Someone loaded you down with their assignment and called it your calling. And right now, in this holy stillness, God is not just protecting you from new threats. He is cutting old weights off your back that you should have put down years ago. Some of the very things you were grieving were never meant to survive the next chapter of your life. That door that closed wasn't God punishing you. It was God pulling you out of the wreckage before the crash. That person who walked away wasn't abandonment. It was a barricade going up around your future. That opportunity that fell through wasn't failure. It was a storm warning, heaven saying, "Not that road, not now, trust me." Isaiah 43:18, 1:9. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. You cannot step into the new thing while your hands are still wrapped around what God has already released. So right now, if you sense that God is shielding you from something you cannot yet fully name, something you feel but can't explain, something that has been pulling at you from outside this lockdown, type right now, "Keep me covered," because the lockdown isn't over. And in the next few moments, I'm going to tell you exactly what you must stop touching right now, today, before the door to your next chapter opens. Because if you reach back for the wrong thing at the wrong moment, you will miss the most important open door of your entire life. Now that you understand the lockdown has been issued, I need to tell you something that could cost you everything if you miss it. Because surviving a lockdown isn't just about staying inside. It's about knowing what you must not touch. There are people right now, chosen ones, anointed ones, people just like you who heard the alarm. They felt the stillness. They knew something sacred was happening. And then they broke it. With their own hands, with their own impatience, with their own fear. And they lost the breakthrough that was already being prepared behind that sealed door. Don't let that be you. Not tonight. The first thing you must not do is panic. I know that sounds simple. But beloved, panic is the enemy's most effective weapon inside a divine lockdown. Because when God goes quiet, when the answer doesn't come, when the bank account doesn't shift, when the doctor's report doesn't change, panic tells you that silence means death. It doesn't. Psalm 46:10 doesn't say, try harder. It doesn't say, figure it out. It says, be still and know that I am God. Be still. That is not weakness. That is warfare. The most dangerous thing you can do to hell is refuse to panic when everything around you is screaming that you should. The second thing you must not do is chase voices. You know what I mean. The moment God goes quiet, everybody else gets loud. Your neighbor has an opinion. Your cousin has advice. That voice on the internet says God told them something for you. The fear in your own head sounds so convincing it almost passes for prophecy. Stop chasing voices. John 10:27, Jesus said it plainly. My sheep hear my voice, not voices. His voice, singular, one. In a holy lockdown, God seals the room so he can speak clearly. Every outside voice you chase is a crack in that seal. And beloved, a cracked seal lets things in that were never assigned to your season. The third thing you must not do is announce every spiritual shift. This one will sting. Some of you have been posting, calling, telling everyone what God is doing, and I understand why. When heaven moves on you, you want to shout it from the rooftop. But Proverbs 4:23 warns, guard your heart above all else. Not everything God shows you is meant to be shared before it's sealed. There are people in your circle, not enemies, but people who simply cannot hold the weight of what God is building in you. And when you pour sacred things into unprepared vessels, it spills. What God is doing in you right now is too valuable to be cheapened by premature announcement. Seal it, protect it, let it develop in the dark like every great thing does. The fourth thing, and this one hits hardest, do not return to what God removed. That relationship he ended, that door he shut, that season he closed. God didn't remove those things to hurt you. He removed them to protect the room he was building for you. And yet some of you have been knocking on doors God deliberately locked, calling people God deliberately moved, revisiting environments God deliberately sealed off. Every time you go back to what God removed, you are walking out of the shelter in the middle of the storm. Genesis 19:17. The angel's instruction to Lot was not complicated. Flee and do not look back. Not a suggestion, a survival command. What God removed from your life was not a loss. It was a boundary. The fifth thing you must not do is interpret silence as failure. This one has broken more chosen ones than any attack hell ever launched. You prayed, you believed, you trusted, and heaven went quiet. So you assumed the worst. You assumed God was disappointed. You assumed you missed it. You assumed it was over. But beloved, let me ask you something that will stop you cold. Was Jesus failing in the tomb? He was silent for 3 days. No movement, no sign, nothing. And yet, the greatest breakthrough in all of human history was being engineered in that silence. Your silence is not your sentence. It is your setup. The sixth thing, do not break your own covering with impatience. You can survive an attack from the outside. Chosen ones do it every day. But what no one warns you about is this: many people lose their breakthrough by breaking divine timing with their own hands. They couldn't wait 3 more days. They couldn't hold the position 1 more week. They forced an answer. They pushed open a door. They demanded a sign. And the moment they stepped outside the covering, the lockdown they broke wasn't God's protection leaving them. It was them leaving it. Isaiah 40:31. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. Wait, not rush, not demand, not manipulate. Wait. In a holy lockdown, beloved, there are things the chosen must not touch. Old pride, old panic, old permission, old doors. If you are willing to stay under God's timing instead of surrendering to your own fear, type right now, "I will not break cover," because here is what is happening on the other side of your stillness. Right now, behind that sealed door you've been staring at, God is not sleeping. God is not slow. God is not ignoring you. He is building something. And the next part of this message is where many chosen ones finally understand for the first time why their prayers have felt delayed, not denied, not forgotten, delayed, on purpose, by design, for a reason that will make you weep with gratitude when it's finally revealed. Stay with me, because what God is doing behind that door is bigger than anything you've been asking for. Now that the alarm has sounded, now that you've gone still enough to finally hear it, I need to take you somewhere most people never get to go. Behind the door, not the door you've been knocking on, not the door that slammed in your face, not the door you've been sitting outside of, wondering if God even remembers you're waiting. I mean the door heaven sealed shut on your behalf. Because here's what nobody told you. Here's the truth that's been hidden from you in plain sight. While you were out there grieving that closed door, while you were crying yourself to sleep, rehearsing everything you lost, wondering what you did wrong, God was not sitting still. God was working, not slowly, not casually, not in some distant, detached way that doesn't touch your real life. He was working specifically on you. In rooms you were never meant to enter, because some of His holiest work happens in sealed places. Let me ask you something that's going to cut straight to your chest. Have you ever watched a surgeon operate? Do you know why they lock those doors? Do you know why nobody walks in and out of that room freely? Because the procedure is too delicate, too precise, too sacred to be interrupted by noise, by distraction, by well-meaning people who don't understand what's actually being done. That is exactly what God has been doing in your sealed season. Job 23:10 says it plain. He knows the way that I take. When He has tested me, I will come forth as gold. Gold doesn't come out of an open field. Gold comes out of a sealed furnace. The heat has to be contained. The pressure has to be controlled. And beloved, if you've been feeling like the walls are too close, like the heat is too much, like the room keeps getting smaller, that is not God abandoning the process. That is God protecting the process. So what exactly has heaven been doing behind that door? Let me tell you, and I need you to receive every single word of this, because this is the part the enemy has been desperate to keep you from understanding. First, God has been rearranging your assignments. What you were called to carry 5 years ago is not what He's loading you with now. Some of you had a vision that seemed to die, a ministry that went quiet, a purpose that stalled, and you called it failure, but heaven called it renovation. God doesn't destroy blueprints, He upgrades them. What He's building in your next chapter requires architecture. Your old assignment was never designed to hold. Second, He has been cutting illegal access. There were people in your life, voices in your ear, open doors in your path that looked like blessing but carried contamination. And God, in His mercy, not His cruelty, sealed them off before they could reach what He was building in you. Some of the relationships that hurt you the most, when they ended, they were God removing what you would have never willingly let go. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." When you wouldn't guard the gate, God sealed the entire building. Third, He has been healing private wounds. Not the wounds you talk about, the ones you don't. The ones you buried so deep, you stopped checking on them. The betrayal from someone who sat in the front row of your life. The grief you packed away in a box because you didn't have time to fall apart. The shame you carry about seasons nobody knows about. God has been in those sealed rooms, beloved, quietly, tenderly, without an audience, because some of His most sacred healing happens where nobody can clap for you. Do you understand what I'm saying to you right now? You've been apologizing for your stillness. You've been embarrassed by your quiet season. You've been explaining yourself to people who couldn't understand why you weren't moving. But the most powerful thing happening in your life right now is invisible to everyone around you, because God works in sealed places. Isaiah 45:3, "And I need you to hear this. God said, I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places." Not public places, secret places. The treasure He's depositing in you right now cannot be seen yet. It cannot be measured yet. It cannot be announced yet. It is being stored, sealed, protected, waiting for the moment He gives you the key and says, "Now, open it." And here is the climax of everything I'm telling you right now. While you were grieving the closed door, God was rewriting what was allowed to enter your life next. He wasn't just closing a chapter. He was changing the entire contract, the people, the provisions, the opportunities headed toward you. He was reviewing them all, removing the counterfeits, turning away what would have used you, holding back what would have cost you more than you could afford to lose. He was not punishing you with that silence. He was protecting your next chapter from being violated by your last season. Can you receive that? Because if you can, if that truth just landed in your spirit the way I believe it did, then type right now, "Work behind the door, Lord." Let heaven know you're not just watching a video. You are witnessing your own story. And here is what I need you to sit with as we go deeper. If God has been this meticulous, this detailed, this precise, this protective in the sealed season, what do you think He is preparing to release when the door finally opens? That answer is coming. And it will change everything you thought you knew about what's next. Now I need you to do something. I need you to be completely honest with yourself for the next few minutes. Not with me, not with your family, not with your pastor, with yourself. Because what I'm about to read over your life, these are not generic symptoms. These are not coincidences. These are the hidden fingerprints of God pressed into the details of your daily life. And if you've been missing them, it's because nobody told you what to look for. Until right now. Sign number 1. You've lost your appetite for noise. The TV that used to comfort you, it bothers you now. The phone calls that used to fill your day feel hollow. The social gatherings, the small talk, the constant motion of other people's lives, you can't fake your way through them anymore. You sit in the middle of a crowded room and feel like you're watching everything from behind glass. You thought something was wrong with you. You thought maybe you were depressed, maybe getting too old, maybe just tired. But beloved, Elijah heard God not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the wind. He heard Him in the still small voice. 1 Kings 19:12. And before God could speak in that whisper, He had to strip away every sound that was competing for Elijah's attention. That silence you've been feeling isn't emptiness. God cleared the room. Sign number 2. People who used to be central to your life have quietly stepped back, or you have stepped back from them. And what's shocking is, it didn't hurt the way you expected it to. Friendships that once felt essential now feel like effort. Relatives you used to call every Sunday, you find yourself hesitating before dialing. The circles that defined you for decades are slowly, almost supernaturally, falling away. And here's what nobody will say out loud. You feel guilty about it. You think it means you're becoming cold, distant, ungrateful. I'm telling you right now that guilt is a lie. When God separates a chosen one, He doesn't make an announcement. He just quietly removes what was keeping them distracted. Proverbs 18:1 says, "A man who isolates himself seeks wisdom." The King James calls it seeking wisdom in his own desire. God-orchestrated isolation isn't antisocial, it's sacred. Sign number 3. Every time you try to go backward, every time you attempt to return to who you were, what you were doing, where you were comfortable, something stops you. Not bad luck, not circumstances, something, a heaviness, a resistance, like walking through spiritual concrete, like a door that looks open but won't move no matter how hard you push. You've been calling that frustration. God calls it protection, because Lot's wife looked back and turned to a pillar of salt. Genesis 19:26. And God wasn't being cruel. He was being urgent. Some exits close permanently for a reason. The season behind you cannot survive where you're going. Sign number 4. Your plans keep getting interrupted. You schedule something and it falls apart. You arrange something and it collapses. You try to force movement in a direction that once felt natural, and the universe itself seems to resist you. 3 interruptions, 5, 10, and every time you blame yourself. You blame your age. You blame your luck. You blame everything except the one who holds the master schedule. Job 42:2 declares it plainly. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. If God is rerouting your plans, beloved, it is because your plans were taking you somewhere He has already sealed off. Sign number 5. You need quiet the way you once needed company. You find yourself praying longer, sitting in stillness longer, opening your Bible at hours that surprise even you. 3 in the morning, 4, before dawn, before coffee, before the world wakes up, something in you is awake, reaching, leaning. That is not insomnia. That is a chosen one being summoned. Sign number 6. You feel hidden. But, and this is critical, you do not feel empty. There is a difference between hidden and abandoned, between quiet and forgotten. Deep beneath the stillness, beneath the confusion, beneath everything that looks like nothing is happening, there is a knowing, a quiet, unshakable, inexplicable knowing that something is being built in you that hasn't been built before. You can't explain it to your children, you can't describe it to your friends, but you feel it. That is God sealing His work before He reveals it. Sign number 7. You simply cannot pretend anymore. You cannot manufacture enthusiasm for things that no longer fit your spirit. You cannot smile through conversations that feel spiritually hollow. You cannot sit in rooms that once fed you but now drain you. You've tried. God knows you've tried. But something in you keeps refusing to perform. That is not rebellion. That is refinement. Jeremiah 20:9. His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. When God's fire is burning inside a chosen one, every counterfeit warmth becomes unbearable. When God locks down a chosen one, He removes the taste for what used to keep them distracted, not to punish them, to prepare them. Here is the question that will keep burning in your mind long after you stop watching. If these are the signs that the lockdown is real, then what comes after the lockdown? What is heaven preparing to release? And what happens to the chosen ones who recognize the signs versus those who fight them and walk back into the noise? If 3 or more of these signs have been happening in your life, type right now, "This is my season." Because what God is about to show you next is what the lockdown was protecting you for, and it will change everything. Now let me tell you what's on the other side of that sealed door. Because the lockdown was never the destination, it was the corridor. Think about Noah. 120 years he built in obedience while the whole world laughed at him. 120 years of silence, isolation, and what looked to everyone else like absolute failure. And then the rain came, and the ark that sealed, locked, shut-in vessel became the only thing standing between extinction and a new beginning. That's you, beloved. You have been the ark, and the rain is already falling. But here's what I need you to understand right now, because most people never get this far. The ones who came out of the ark didn't come out the same. They came out into a different world, a cleaner world, a world where everything that was corrupt, everything that was toxic, everything that had been contaminating their atmosphere was gone. That is the promise waiting on the other side of your obedience. You want to know what changes when you stop fighting the lockdown and finally surrender to it. The first thing that shifts, and pay attention, because this will shock you, is your discernment. You will start seeing people clearly, not cynically, clearly. The ones who were draining you, manipulating you, using your grace as a doormat, you will recognize them before they even open their mouths. God doesn't just give you freedom from toxic cycles, He gives you eyes that stop walking into them. Proverbs 4:18 says, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day." That's not poetry. That's a promise with a trajectory. The longer you stay in obedience, the clearer your vision becomes. The noise falls away. The confusion lifts. And what once took you months to figure out, God shows you in minutes. But that's just the beginning. Because after the discernment comes something even more powerful: emotional stability. Now, listen to me carefully, because this is where some of you are going to break open inside. How many years have you been riding the wave? Up one week, devastated the next. Hopeful in the morning, shattered by noon. You've been living at the mercy of your circumstances, and your peace has been a hostage to other people's choices. That ends when you come out of this lockdown right. God doesn't just heal your emotions, He reorders them. He builds something inside you that the world cannot shake, because it was built in the secret place, under divine pressure, in the stillness where He alone was your stability. Paul wrote it from a prison cell, a real one, 4 walls, chains on his wrists in Philippians 4:7. The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds. Guard, not suggest, not offer, guard. Like a soldier stationed at the door of your soul. That kind of peace is not available at any pharmacy in this country. It cannot be manufactured. It can only be forged. And God has been forging yours in this very season you've been calling your worst. Now here's where I need to slow down and speak directly to someone in this room. You've been carrying a version of yourself for decades that doesn't belong to you anymore. An identity built out of someone else's rejection. Someone told you, maybe a parent, maybe a spouse, maybe a doctor, maybe a child who should have known better. They told you what you were worth. And somewhere deep in your bones, you believed them. Let me tell you what God says. Isaiah 43:1, "I have called you by name. You are mine. Not what you did, not what you built, not what you lost. You, the whole of you, the tired you, the confused you, the one who cried alone last Tuesday at 2 inches the morning when nobody was watching. That person, His." And when you come out of this lockdown, that old borrowed identity, the one stitched together from other people's opinions, it stays behind, sealed in the room, God locked. Because you are being released into something the world hasn't seen yet. The relationships that enter your life after this season will be different. No more chaos walking through the front door dressed as love. No more confusion pretending to be connection. The right people, the God-sent ones, they will recognize what's on you. And they will come without drama, without manipulation, without you having to beg them to stay. Right relationships will arrive. Old assignments will become clear. Doors you stopped knocking on will open from the inside. And beloved, listen closely, the authority you've been carrying but never fully walked in. It will become unmistakable, not loud, not arrogant, but settled. The kind of authority that makes a room go quiet when you speak. The kind that comes from a person who has been through the fire and decided to let it refine them rather than destroy them. The same God who shut you in is the God who will bring you out different, cleaner, stronger, and far less available to what once drained you. That is not wishful thinking. That is covenant language. The steel doesn't curse the furnace. It comes out sharper because of it. So right now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Right now, I need you to make a declaration that heaven is listening for. Type in the comments, I will come out changed. Because what comes next in this message is the revelation you came here for tonight. The final piece. The reason this word found you at this exact hour, in this exact season, with this exact weight on your shoulders. Don't you move. Don't you close this out. What God is about to say to you next is the very thing the enemy has been working overtime to make sure you never heard. Stay with me. You heard the alarm. You felt the stillness. You stopped running. And now, right now, I need to tell you something that is going to change the way you see every single painful season you have ever walked through. Because you've been reading the wrong headline this whole time. You looked at your life, the closed doors, the silence, the confusion, the betrayals, and you called it falling apart. You called it God's punishment. You called it your fault. You spent nights on your knees asking, Lord, what did I do wrong? But I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. You were never falling apart. You were being sealed. Do you know what happens when a master craftsman preserves the finest oil? He doesn't leave it exposed. He doesn't let it sit open in the wind, collecting dust, attracting contamination. He takes that oil, that precious, consecrated oil, and he seals it in a vessel. He locks it away. He protects it from everything that would corrupt it before its appointed time. That's what God has been doing with you. The loneliness you felt? That wasn't rejection, that was filtration. God was removing every voice that would have pulled you off course, every relationship that carried poison dressed as love, every distraction that looked like opportunity but led to dead ends. The silence you've been living in? That wasn't abandonment, that was construction. You can't hear a building going up when you're standing inside it while it's being built. The noise you couldn't understand, that was heaven hammering your destiny into place. The delay that broke your heart? That wasn't God being slow. That was precision. Isaiah 60:22 declares, I am the Lord. In its time, I will do this swiftly. In its time. God doesn't operate on your calendar. He operates on a blueprint you haven't seen yet. The frustration that wore you down every single morning? That was detox. Every ounce of self-reliance, every trace of pride, every habit of running to the world before running to God, it was being drawn out of you. Like poison drawn from a wound. Painful? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. And the confinement, the feeling of being locked in, held back, cut off from everything that was moving around you. That wasn't a cage. That was consecration. Leviticus 8:33 records God telling Moses to instruct Aaron and his sons, do not leave the entrance to the tent of meeting for 7 days. 7 days locked inside the sacred tent, not as punishment, not as isolation, but as preparation for holy assignment. They could not step into their calling until the consecration was complete. You have been in your consecration chamber. And beloved, what God seals, hell cannot touch. Think about Noah. The Lord shut the door of the ark. Genesis 7:16 says, then the Lord shut him in. Not Noah, not his family. The Lord shut the door. When God locks something down, it isn't locked away from life. It is locked away from destruction. The rain fell 40 days. The whole world was consumed. But inside that sealed vessel, life was preserved. Life was protected. Life was being carried to a new world. That has been your life. Rain falling on every side. Everything around you shaking, crumbling, washing away. And you couldn't understand why you felt so still, so enclosed, so set apart. Because you were sealed inside a vessel that hell had no key to open. Now let me ask you something that should stop you cold. What if every person who walked away from you, they walked away because they were not cleared for where God is taking you? What if every door that slammed in your face was God removing a detour that would have cost you your destiny? What if the loneliness wasn't God leaving the room? What if it was God clearing the room? Some of you spent years feeling invisible. You prayed, you served, you gave, you waited, and heaven felt like solid concrete above your head. You thought your faith was failing, but Daniel was in a sealed den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in a sealed furnace. Lazarus was in a sealed tomb. And in every single case, the seal was not the ending. The seal was the setup for the miracle. Because you cannot resurrect what was never buried. And you cannot demonstrate God's power in the open air. The greatest miracles in Scripture happened in the most confined, most desperate, most sealed-off places imaginable. Your confinement was not your conclusion. It was your consecration. And now, right now, I want you to feel the full weight of this truth crashing over you like a wave. You were never trapped. You were being preserved. You were never being erased. You were being consecrated. And what God locks down, hell cannot tamper with. If this word just unlocked your understanding of your entire season, everything that felt like loss, everything that felt like silence, everything that felt like God had forgotten your name, type right now. Now I understand. Because the lockdown is not your ending, chosen one. It is your threshold. And what waits on the other side of a consecrated door is not what you left behind. It is everything heaven has been building while you were being sealed. The door is about to open, and you will not walk out the same person who walked in. Stay with me, because what God does next will require everything you just received. Let me speak to you now with everything I have, not as a preacher, not as a teacher, as someone who has watched God move in the quiet, and I need you to hear what I'm about to say down in your bones. You are not crazy. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. And you are absolutely, unequivocally not being punished. What you are is covered. Deliberately. Purposefully. By the hand of a God who does not seal rooms by accident. Think about Noah. God didn't just tell him rebuild the ark. Scripture says in Genesis 7:16, the Lord shut him in. God himself closed that door, not Noah, not his family. God sealed the room. And outside, the whole world called it foolishness, called it delay, called it isolation. But inside that sealed place, everything God loved was being preserved. That is your life right now. You have been apologizing for a distance that God created. You have been embarrassed by a stillness that heaven ordered. You have been explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your season. And beloved, it is time right now, tonight, to stop apologizing for your covering. Some of you pulled back from noise and called it depression. God called it discernment. Some of you watched relationships fall away and called it loneliness. God called it pruning. Some of you stopped forcing doors open and called it giving up. Heaven called it obedience. Psalm 91:1 does not say, "He who runs in the presence of the Almighty." It says, "He who dwells in the secret place." The secret place is not comfortable. The secret place is not loud. The secret place feels like nothing is happening, but everything is happening. So here is your charge. Not a suggestion, a charge. Stay prayerful, even when your prayers feel like they're hitting the ceiling. They are not. They are going straight through. Stay quiet where heaven has told you to be quiet. Every time you feel the urge to explain your season to someone who cannot carry it, stop. Stay watchful. There are signs around you right now that you will miss if you run back into the noise. Stay out of fear. Fear is not a warning from God. Fear is the enemy's attempt to make you break out of the very room where God is forming you. Stay open to fresh instruction. What God told you 5 years ago may have been for 5 years ago. He is speaking something new. And stay ready for the moment that door opens. Because when heaven unlocks what heaven has sealed, it will happen with a velocity that will require every ounce of who you have become inside this stillness. Now let me speak directly to my older viewers, the ones who have been watching this and thinking, but I'm running out of time. I'm in my 70s, my 80s. What chapter could possibly be left? Let me ask you something that will cut straight through that lie. How old was Moses when God finally put him to work? 80 years old, standing at a burning bush, being told his greatest assignment hadn't even started yet. How old was Anna the prophetess when she finally saw the fulfillment of everything she'd been believing for? 84. And scripture says she didn't miss it for 1 second. God is not late in your life. He is on time for the chapter you haven't read yet. What is ahead of you even now, even after everything, may still be one of the most meaningful, most powerful, most surprising chapters you have ever walked through. The world counts you out at 65. Heaven is just now counting you in. And this is the truth that everything in this message has been building toward. Write it down, burn it into your spirit. If heaven has shut the door, then your job is not to break out. It is to become who God is forming in the sealed place. Stop trying to escape what God engineered. The breaker is coming. The door will open, but not before you are ready to walk through it with authority, with wisdom, with the unshakable identity of someone who was forged, not rushed into purpose. Right now, type in the comments, "I will stay under God's covering." Let heaven hear your agreement. And if someone in your life is in a season they cannot explain, a season that feels like silence, like shutdown, like the world forgot their name, share this message with them right now, because some people are breaking out of the very room where God is building their miracle. Subscribe if you want messages that don't just comfort you, but prepare you. And when this ends, go straight to the next message. Because not every chosen one understands what happens after the lockdown lifts. And what comes next, what God releases when He finally opens that sealed door, will change everything you thought you knew about your future. Father, cover every soul that received this word tonight. Let them feel the weight of your hand, not as burden, but as protection. Remind them that sealed is not abandoned, still is not stuck, and quiet is sometimes the loudest thing heaven ever speaks. They are yours. Keep them, form them, and when the time comes, release them.